'Tis the season, fantasy football season, and it's time to start preparing for those fantasy football drafts. So to join me today with his top 10 quarterbacks, SI's senior fantasy analyst, Michael Fabiano. Fabs, let's break it down, starting with your fourth tier for starting quarterbacks.
And these tiers also encompass just the top 10 here. I'm going to start off at number 10 with Matthew Stafford, who's coming off a banana season, threw for almost 5,000 yards, was a top 10 fantasy quarterback last year. I think you have to be a little bit concerned about the offensive line this season. That could lead to some more interceptions, but overall, that Rams offense is going to be one of the league's most explosive. And then coming in at number 9 is Russell Wilson. Will Nathaniel Hackett let Russ cook? I think he will. Now, last year, the numbers were not great, and Russell's never been the most consistent quarterback in fantasy football, but he could have an opportunity to put up big numbers, and he's got some great weapons there in the Mile High City. And then the final quarterback in the tier is Jalen Hurts. He rushed for almost 800 yards last season. He was ridiculously consistent in the first half of the year. But I guess the question mark here is, Jen, will the Eagles continue to run the ball like they did in the second half of the year? Are they going to throw it more with A.J. Brown now in the mix? We're going to find that out soon. Regardless, Jalen Hurts is a top 8 quarterback and potentially a top 5 player at the position.
Moving up to tier 3, you've got a veteran and a young gun.
Right, we'll start off with Joe Burrow, who was bananas good down the stretch last season. Overall, his numbers were somewhat inconsistent, but the Bengals did a lot to improve the offensive line in the offseason, and they really needed to do that. That's going to benefit Burrow. He's obviously got great weapons in the pass attack with Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and then, of course, in the backfield, Joe Mixon. So he is a number 1 quarterback in fantasy without question. And then, how about this other guy? You ever hear of Tom Brady? He's going to be 45 years old when the season kicks. 45! Like, that's crazy. But he's still putting up gangbusters numbers. Now, he may be without Chris Godwin to start the season. We know Rob Gronkowski is retired, at least for now. But Brady's the GOAT, and he is certainly going to be drafted as such.
Yeah, the GOAT is the GOAT until proven otherwise. Let's move on up to tier number 2.
2 quarterbacks who are quite similar in that they're very mobile. And the first one there, Kyler Murray, who will be without DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games, but they did bring in Marquise Hollywood Brown, his former college teammate, to pair with him. So I think he'll be fine. The rushing totals were down last year compared to what he did a couple of seasons ago, maybe a little bit banged up. That may have been the case, but I think Kyler's going to be locked and loaded as one of the 5 best quarterbacks in fantasy. And the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Are there question marks about his receivers? I mean, sure, beyond Mark Andrews, we're hoping that we see a breakout season from Rashad Bateman. But Jackson almost rushed for 800 yards last year, despite the fact that he missed a bunch of games due to injuries. He is a 1,000-yard runner and potentially a 3,500-yard passer. Lamar Jackson is maybe the most mobile quarterback in the National Football League, and certainly one of the most productive from a fantasy perspective.
Okay, and we've been waiting for it. Who is in the very top tier for your starting fantasy football quarterback?
The top tier will begin with Patrick Mahomes, who comes in at number 3. And Mahomes has been the number 1 guy in fantasy rankings for a couple of years in a row, but he's fallen a little bit, right? I mean, Josh Allen's been so good, and there's no Tyreek Hill. And that's going to be the big question mark. Who will replace Tyreek Hill? Oh, wait, no one can replace Tyreek Hill. So MVS, potentially, Juju Smith-Schuster. They brought in some wide receivers. They drafted Sky Moore. No one is close to being as talented or having game-breaking skills like Tyreek, so I think Mahomes falls a little bit, but still in my top 3. At number 2, Justin Herbert there in Los Angeles. The weapons are there. This kid, Jen, has had more touchdown passes, more passing yards, and more fantasy points in his first 2 years than any quarterback in the history of the National Football League in that time. Like, that's bananas. He's been unbelievably productive, and he is in an offense that will score, and he's also in a division where his offense will have to score because there are going to be a lot of shootouts there. And at number 1, this one's a no-brainer. It's low-hanging fruit. It's Josh Allen. He's been the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football for 2 straight years. And I know Brian Daboll's no longer there, but I think the offense under Ken Dorsey will be very similar to what he ran. And you can argue his weapons are better this year, right? Emmanuel Sanders is gone. Cole Beasley is gone. Replacing them, Gabriel Davis and Jamison Crowder. They also brought in O.J. Howard from Tampa Bay, who is a big pass-catching option in the red zone. And they drafted James Cook. So this could be the best offense that Allen's ever been at the helm of, and he is certainly the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football.
It's a stacked field when the reigning MVP and our boy Dak Prescott doesn't even make the top 10. It is so exciting to draft your fantasy football teams this year. So many options for all of Michael Fabiano's rankings, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and more. You can always visit us and get our entire fantasy football draft kit online. Sleepers, busts, breakouts, comeback players. Find us at si.com, but before you go, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we'll be bringing you tons of video content that's going to help you dominate your fantasy football league and win this year.